Statistics show that the price of education has increased at about double the rate of inflation in South Africa, which makes it increasingly difficult to afford for the average South African. Now, for this reason, a brand new concept was born called Kinfundi, which provides an innovative way for South Africans to save for future tuition fees. Now, this morning we are joined by the founder of this venture, Dakin Parker. Dude, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Very good to be here.
And I do hope that you are the little light at the end of my tunnel now when it comes to education fees. Let's start off by looking at some of those statistics, man. What happened to the price of education over the past 20 years?
Well, I mean, you ask any parent and they'll tell you that they're feeling it in their pockets. The Education Price Index, the EPI, has averaged double the CPI, Consumer Price Index, over the last 15 years. It's almost 10%. Education inflation is therefore double what that is. And you just have to look at the Fees Must Fall protest action here and also in around the world. In the US, in the UK, there have been protest marches. The tuition fees are just becoming unaffordable.
Man, because I can understand it. I mean, I've got two young ones. I'm looking at it at the moment. Even preschool, creches, the prices are really high, especially when it comes to a private institution as well. But I mean, we're talking about these income gaps in South Africa specifically, and it's the widest in the world, and it is continuing on expanding. It's still getting wider.
Correct, and it's still a global problem, but in South Africa specifically, income distribution is measured by something called the Gini coefficient, and that's basically the measure between the weighted distance between the haves and the have-nots. Yeah. In South Africa, we are one of the highest, if not the highest in the world, 0.63 to 0.7, which means that the gap in South Africa is higher than anywhere else in the world, and that is really, in South Africa, 10% of the population earns 60% of the income. And we've done really well since democracy in that for the first 15 years of democracy, we've increased household income by 112%.
Okay.
But when you have a look at it by race, it's actually quite surprising what those statistics are in that in a white household, the increase is 275%. Coloured households have increased by 237%, Asian households by 118%, but black households have only increased by 62% in the same period.
Wow, okay. So with this widening income gap that we have in South Africa, I mean, what does this actually mean? How does it translate in terms of education, tuition fees?
Yeah, it's about upward mobility, and it's about getting the poor out of poverty. And when education becomes that much more affordable, it's so much more difficult to do that. Government is trying really hard. About 3/4 of schools in South Africa are now impacted positively by the no fee and fee exemption policies, which is fantastic. So nearly 98% of 15-year-olds are in school in South Africa at the moment, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
However, 35% of those folks will drop out before matric. And a third of those that do drop out say they've either got to make more money or they don't have enough money to afford the schooling.
Exactly.
And the premium there is that 70% of those kids that drop out will be unemployed 4 years later. It's a massive problem.
It is a massive problem. You know what? You gave us a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics right now. We're going to get into exactly what Kinfundi is all about in just a little bit. You don't want to miss that. It is all about prepping for your future education for your children. Don't miss that right now. We are continuing with the trend of our youth, continuing with our Youth Month trend here on Expresso. Graham, what do you have?